President-elect Donald Trump has announced plans to impose a 25% tariff on all Canadian imports, citing concerns about illegal immigration and drug trafficking, particularly the smuggling of fentanyl across the U.S.-Canada border. He stated that these tariffs would remain in effect until Canada addresses these issues to the satisfaction of his administration. Additionally, Trump suggested that Canada should consider becoming the 51st state of the United States, sparking significant debate among Canadian leaders and citizens. During a press conference at his Mar-a-Lago resort, Trump argued that removing the border would improve national security. In response, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau firmly rejected the idea, declaring, "There is not a snowball's chance in hell of Canada joining the United States." Conservative Party leader Pierre Poilievre echoed this sentiment, stating, "Canada will never be the 51st state, period. We are a great and independent country." New Democratic Party leader Jagmeet Singh criticized Trump, saying, "Cut the crap, Donald. No Canadian wants to join you," later calling him a bully. Trump's comments have been met with widespread disapproval in Canada. A recent Ledger poll showed only 13% of Canadians support merging with the United States, while 82% oppose the idea. Canadian leaders are now considering countermeasures, including retaliatory tariffs. Trudeau has condemned the proposed tariffs, warning of the economic harm they could cause by increasing consumer costs and disrupting trade. He dismissed Trump's idea of annexation as a distraction from real issues. The Canadian government has pledged to retaliate, with further details to follow. Historically, the United States and Canada have enjoyed a strong trade partnership, with bilateral trade in goods and services totaling approximately $900 billion annually. Both nations are each other's top trading partners, connected by agreements like the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, USMCA. Previous tariff disputes, such as those on steel and aluminium in 2018, strained relations but were eventually resolved through negotiations. The proposed tariffs have raised concerns among business leaders and economists. They warn of disruptions to supply chains, increased consumer costs, and potential financial market instability. The Canadian dollar has already weakened due to these tensions, reflecting investor unease. However, Canada is not the only country affected by Trump's trade policies. Broad tariff measures. Trump has consistently used social media platforms, like Truth Social, to announce broad tariff plans targeting major U.S. trading partners, including Mexico, China, and the European Union. He has justified these measures as necessary to address trade imbalances, illegal immigration, and national security concerns. On Mexico and Canada, Trump announced in November 2024 a 25% tariff on all imports from both nations, citing illegal immigration and the fentanyl crisis as primary reasons. He pledged that these tariffs would stay until Mexico and Canada take significant action to address these issues. On China, Trump proposed an additional 10% tax on all Chinese imports to reduce trade deficits and curb the flow of illicit substances. He has long criticized China for its trade practices, including allegations of intellectual property theft and currency manipulation. Similar tariffs in 2018 raised costs for U.S. businesses and consumers, and analysts predict similar effects this time. On the European Union, Trump accused the EU of unfair trade practices, including imposing higher tariffs on U.S. goods. He proposed a 25% tariff on key EU exports, such as automobiles, wine, and luxury goods. The EU, one of the United States' largest trading partners, has bilateral trade in goods and services exceeding $1 trillion annually. Germany, in particular, is expected to be significantly impacted by these tariffs. In particular, the automotive industry could be significantly affected, as it relies heavily on exporting high-value vehicles to the United States. European leaders, including German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, have warned of retaliatory measures if such tariffs are implemented. Potential tariffs on BRIC nations have also been proposed. In addition to targeting specific countries, former President Donald Trump suggested imposing a 100% tariff on imports from BRIC nations, Brazil, Russia, India, and China. If executed, this unprecedented move could destabilize global trade, impacting sectors ranging from agriculture to technology. Economists caution that such tariffs might provoke widespread retaliatory actions, leading to global economic instability. Canada, too, is preparing a comprehensive retaliation strategy in case Trump imposes a 25% levy on Canadian goods. Unlike the selective counter-tariffs of the 2018 trade dispute, this response might include nearly all U.S. products exported to Canada. In 2018, Canada targeted specific items like bourbon whiskey from Republican strongholds. This time, similar products, such as Florida orange juice, could face tariffs again, along with a broader range of U.S. exports. Anonymous government officials indicated that the aim is to match U.S. tariffs dollar for dollar. Matching tariffs fully may prove challenging if Trump enacts widespread tariffs on Canadian exports. However, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's administration is exploring all options to maximize economic pressure on U.S. exporters while avoiding a full-scale trade war. Trump's recent statements threatening Canada with economic force and suggesting it should become the 51st U.S. state have sparked backlash. Trudeau dismissed these remarks as distractions from the economic harm caused by Trump's tariff proposals, which could increase consumer prices. Canada is the largest purchaser of U.S. goods, importing $320 billion worth in the first 11 months of last year, nearly matching the EU's $341 billion. However, retaliatory tariffs could harm Canada's economy, potentially reducing GDP by up to 5.6% over several years if fully implemented. In response, Canada is considering export taxes on key commodities such as oil, uranium, and potash to pressure the U.S. economically. Canada is a major supplier of crude oil to the United States, with energy products comprising about 30% of its exports to the U.S. In January 2025. U.S. imports of Canadian crude hit a record high of 4.42 million barrels per day, underlining U.S. refineries' dependence on Canadian oil. Export taxes on oil could disrupt this supply chain, potentially increasing energy costs for American consumers and businesses. Canada is also striving to become the world's largest uranium producer. Companies like Cameco are planning significant production increases to meet growing global demand for nuclear energy. The U.S. heavily relies on Canadian uranium for its nuclear power plants, and export taxes could affect the availability and cost of this resource, impacting energy production and national security. As a leading producer of potash, a key ingredient in fertilizers, Canada plays a vital role in supporting U.S. agriculture. Export taxes on potash could lead to higher costs for American farmers, increasing food prices and reducing agricultural profitability. The metals industry has also been a focal point in past trade disputes between the U.S. and Canada. While Canadian aluminium exports, led by companies like Rio Tinto and Alcoa, remain a potential target, the steel sector has attracted less criticism. Cleveland-Cliffs Inc., a major U.S. steelmaker, recently acquired Canada's Stelco Holdings Inc., potentially complicating trade dynamics and the impact of new tariffs or export taxes. Implementing export taxes on these commodities poses risks to the Canadian economy, given the significant role of energy products in its export portfolio. However, these measures could serve as a strategic response to U.S. tariffs, aiming to prompt negotiations and reduce the impact of a potential trade war. Former Canadian trade negotiator Steve Verheuel suggested that export taxes could be an effective negotiation tool if the U.S. proceeds with broad tariffs. Let's take a quick moment. If you're enjoying the video so far, we'd really appreciate it if you could hit the like button. Want to be even more helpful? Leave us a comment. It helps us reach a wider audience and improves our content. Thank you for your support. Now, let's dive back into the discussion. Trudeau's government is deliberating whether to release a list of potential tariffs before Trump's inauguration. The decision hinges on the clarity surrounding Trump's trade policies, which remain uncertain. Canadian officials continue to advocate for avoiding a trade war while preparing to respond decisively if necessary. As both nations face potential economic fallout, the stakes in this escalating trade conflict are high, with the future of a $900 billion bilateral trade relationship hanging in the balance. The U.S. tariff policy, particularly the proposed 25% tariffs on Canadian imports, has faced significant criticism for its potential to harm both economies. Analysts warn these tariffs could lead to increased consumer prices, disrupted supply chains, and economic downturns in both countries. For instance, a report by Oxford Economics suggests these tariffs could push Canada into a recession by mid-2025, with GDP falling by 2.5% and inflation surging to 7.2%. In light of these potential repercussions, there are indications that Trump may reconsider the extent of his tariff plans. Reports suggest he is contemplating narrowing the scope of the tariffs to focus on critical imports vital to U.S. national or economic security, such as defense, medical supplies, and energy production. This shift could aim to mitigate negative economic impacts and avoid a full-scale trade war with Canada. However, Trump has publicly denied plans to scale back the tariffs, emphasizing their importance for America's economic prosperity. This contradiction highlights ongoing uncertainty surrounding U.S. trade policy and its implications for international relations and economic stability. The relationship between Canada and the United States has evolved over centuries, transitioning from early conflicts to becoming one of the most deeply integrated and cooperative bilateral partnerships globally. This complex relationship spans economics, culture, security, and diplomacy, influencing not only the two nations but also global affairs. The early history of U.S.-Canada relations was marked by significant tensions. After the American Revolution, approximately 50,000 Loyalists who remained faithful to the British Crown migrated to British-controlled Canada, creating a divide between the two regions. The War of 1812 further strained relations, with invasions occurring on both sides. Despite the conflict, the Treaty of Ghent in 1814 ended hostilities and established a framework for peaceful coexistence. The Rush-Bagot Agreement of 1817 further solidified this peace by demilitarizing the Great Lakes, setting a precedent for diplomatic solutions that would define much of their future relationship. During the 19th century, U.S.-Canada relations were characterized by both territorial disputes and economic cooperation. The Oregon Treaty of 1846 peacefully resolved competing claims in the Pacific Northwest, marking a significant step toward establishing clear boundaries and reducing tensions. The Reciprocity Treaty of 1854 further strengthened their economic ties, allowing for free trade in natural resources. This agreement significantly boosted bilateral trade, with Canadian exports to the U.S. increasing by over 40% during its operation. By the late 19th century, Canada was exporting large quantities of timber and furs to the U.S., while American goods accounted for nearly half of Canada's total imports. The two world wars brought Canada and the United States into closer alignment, particularly in military and economic matters. During World War II, the establishment of the Permanent Joint Board on Defense in 1940 formalized their collaboration in ensuring continental security. This partnership deepened during the post-war era as both nations prioritized economic integration. The Canada-U.S. Automotive Products Agreement, also known as the Auto Pact of 1965, was a landmark accord that integrated the automotive industries of the two countries, paving the way for billions of dollars in cross-border trade annually. By the mid-20th century, the United States had firmly established itself as Canada's largest trading partner. Canada supplied vital raw materials, including oil and natural gas, while importing American machinery and consumer goods. These developments laid the groundwork for the more comprehensive trade agreements that would follow in subsequent years. In the late 20th and early 21st century, the relationship between Canada and the United States reached new heights with the implementation of the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement in 1988, followed by the North American Free Trade Agreement (NAFTA) in 1994. These agreements removed numerous trade barriers and significantly increased economic integration. Between 1990 and 2000, bilateral trade grew exponentially, surpassing $500 billion annually by the early 2000s. By this time, the United States accounted for over 70% of Canada's total trade, highlighting the deep economic interdependence of the two nations. Despite their strong partnership, trade disputes occasionally arose, with disagreements over issues like softwood lumber and dairy products. However, both nations typically resolved these disputes diplomatically, ensuring the continuation of their mutually beneficial partnership. In recent years, the U.S.-Canada relationship has faced new challenges. The Trump administration's imposition of tariffs on Canadian steel, 25%, and aluminium, 10%, in 2018 strained relations, prompting retaliatory measures from Canada targeting iconic U.S. exports such as bourbon whiskey and orange juice. These tensions led to the renegotiation of NAFTA, resulting in the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement (USMCA) in 2020. Despite these hurdles, trade between the two nations remains robust, with an annual value of approximately $900 billion. Canada is the largest foreign supplier of energy to the United States, providing 16% of its crude oil imports, while the U.S. exports significant quantities of machinery, electronics, and agricultural products to Canada. This trade relationship exemplifies their economic interconnectedness, which also extends to tourism and cultural exchanges. Annually, around 20 million Canadians visit the United States, while 15 million Americans travel to Canada, contributing billions of dollars to both economies. The tariff threats issued by the United States under President Donald Trump sparked significant global concerns, targeting key trading partners like Canada, Mexico, China, the European Union, and BRICS nations. Framed as strategies to protect American industries, curb illegal immigration, and address trade imbalances, these measures carried the risk of economic fallout. Retaliation from affected countries, including Canada's consideration of export taxes on critical commodities like oil and potash, the EU's targeting of iconic American products, and Mexico's potential tariffs on U.S. agricultural exports, posed severe risks to the U.S. economy. These measures could increase consumer prices, disrupt supply chains, and strain relations with long-standing allies, potentially overshadowing any intended benefits. Moreover, escalating trade tensions might harm the global economy, reducing trade volumes and causing widespread instability. Whether Trump's bold approach would lead to meaningful global trade reform or self-inflicted economic damage to the United States remained uncertain. History shows tariffs are often used as leverage in trade disputes, but their implementation can lead to unintended consequences. Only time will reveal if these strategies yield positive outcomes or erode the United States' economic standing on the global stage. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and click the notification bell to stay updated on new content. We've also suggested some videos on the screen that you might find interesting, be sure to check them out. See you in our next video.